Happy Earth Week, everyone. I hope you have all enjoyed some fun celebrations. Thank you so much for joining us for a discussion on zero waste purchasing and hospitality. I'm Christina Grace, CEO and co-founder of Foodprint, and I'm here with my co-founder, Krietta Marley, our Chief Product Officer and zero waste purchasing expert. Foodprint partners with hospitality teams all over the world to eliminate waste. For those who don't know us, we have a solution set of tools. Foodprint Tracks, a real-time waste meter for tracking all streams every day, our scorecards, which help clients identify waste reduction opportunities, and our e-learning courses that enable teams to act on those opportunities by putting foundational practices in place. Think color-coded waste bins, proper signage, SOPs, and employee training tools. Our clients have diverted 32 million pounds of materials into the circular economy while saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. Here's some quick Zoom business. This session will be recorded and video will be available for download from our website. Excuse me, all attendees will be muted for the entire time. Please share any questions via the webinar Q&A feature. Today, we're going to cover what zero waste purchasing means for the financial and environmental bottom line for a hotel, why leading hotels are making it a competitive advantage, high impact product switches, meaningful certifications to help avoid greenwashing, and success stories from hotel and restaurant groups. The discussion is going to center on single-use items, particularly those made of plastic. Humans currently produce more than 350 million metric tons of plastic waste per year. The world is producing twice as much plastic waste as 2 decades ago, with only 9% being successfully recycled. Plastic waste makes up 80% of all marine pollution, and according to UNESCO, by 2050, plastic will likely outweigh all fish in the sea. Studies have shown that a hotel can toss 300,000 plus single-use plastic items per month. No joke. We are excited to dive into what hospitality teams can do about this. Krietta is going to provide a brief overview of zero waste purchasing, and then we're going to dive into a discussion.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris, and thanks everyone for joining today. So to start off, we're going to, like Christina said, start by walking through a couple of slides that will help to focus our discussion, and then we will jump into the conversation. So we'll have time to take any questions at the end. So I always like to start by asking, what is zero waste purchasing? For the purposes of our discussion today, we are going to limit the definition to avoiding wasteful and harmful single-use items like dishware and disposable packaging. There are absolutely zero waste purchasing strategies for food and for cleaning chemicals and building construction, but that is for another webinar for another day. And why is zero waste purchasing important? So as it turns out, purchasing impacts not just operational costs, but what we often call the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. Making sustainable choices around the materials that you purchase can improve human health as well as your guest experience. You'll also find the biggest carbon and cost savings through smart purchasing and waste reduction. And that's because zero waste purchasing has both upstream and downstream implications. So while much of a zero waste program focuses on managing downstream waste produced at the site level and then hauled away to be recycled or disposed of, the decisions you make upstream, like what products you purchase, how they're manufactured, and how they're packaged, can have the greatest impact not only on your own waste generation, but also the overall carbon footprint of your operation. So as I mentioned already, today we're focusing largely on single-use products. So what do we mean when we say that? Our definition is any product that is meant to be used just one time before being disposed of. We focus on single-use products because of their outsized impact on daily waste generation and because of their prevalence in our society, especially in food service and hospitality areas. Not all single-use products or materials are created equal, and some have much more harmful effects on the environment and on human health. So we can't talk about single-use without talking about plastic. This makes up the lion's share of our disposable products that we use. 40% of the plastic produced is packaging, used just once and then discarded. The average plastic bag is used for just 13 seconds, but then persists in our environment for over 500 years. We are using and discarding way too much of it. And as Chris already noted, scientists estimate that by 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So this is a problem we really need to nip in the bud. Plastics and single use show up throughout a hotel in many different areas of the operation. But the main areas that we find them in and that we want to focus on are food service for dining in or takeout, food prep and storage packaging, clientele amenities and giveaways, serviceware, signage and decor for events, toiletries, laundry and cleaning products, vendor packaging and products, and office operations in general. And what are some key criteria for evaluating products? What methodology should we use when we're tackling this problem? So when we're assisting a client with zero waste purchasing, we always start with the zero waste decision hierarchy. It ranges from best, most positive impact to worst, least positive impact. The top 3 rungs generally have to do with waste reduction or even elimination through purchasing changes, redesign, and operational changes. The middle rung, replace, means finding more sustainable alternatives for necessary single-use products. And then the bottom rungs have to do with how you actually handle the materials once on site to extend their life or to give them a new life once they leave your building. And when we're talking about products, materials matter. We use a ranking of products from most harmful to least and work to move the worst offenders up the scale toward infinitely recyclable or compostable alternatives, or then better yet, reusables. And finally, what are some certifications you should look out for? So the first thing I always say is that you should definitely be skeptical of any unsubstantiated claims like eco or green on products. Those claims don't really mean anything. They don't have any certification behind them. They don't even have a static definition to them. And so they're often ways that products or companies can just be greenwashed. So instead, look for credible and respected certification labels. We really love BPI certified compostable. It's kind of the gold standard with compostable certification labels. And this label means that the product has been tested to see how quickly it actually decomposes in backyard and commercial composting. Some other good certifications include FSC for sustainable paper products and Cradle to Cradle. Certifications like these make it a lot easier to trust the materials that you're bringing in and to trust that you're not greenwashing. So that's it for today. We can move into questions.
Krietta, thank you so much. That was great. All right, why don't we start with what are some of the highest impact product switches that you've seen amongst our customers?
Absolutely. So just to take a step back, we will often not first focus on products. This is why we really focus on methodology first, because products in terms of their impact and in terms of their prevalence in a business can vary a lot from brand to brand, from a resort to a smaller hotel or a restaurant group. So for that reason, we really focus on methodology first. We focus on materials, and we focus on just kind of generating a better understanding of what might work in your property. But that said, there do tend to be some common offenders that come up again and again. And so those products we already have some solutions for, which we did a lot of research on and discovered through a case study, through a project that we worked on with one of our hotel clients. So we looked at kind of the top products, single-use products that they were using the most, and then identified some more sustainable alternatives for them, whether that was reusables, reduction, or just a more sustainable disposable item.
That's great. That is great. Let's talk a little bit more about this client. What was the process of identifying products to focus on at individual hotels?
Absolutely. So the process, sorry, moving back. The process was to actually put aside any preconceived notions that the properties, the brand, and even we at Foodprint Group came in with. So we already have our bugaboos, our least favorite single-use items that we want to focus on with many of our clients. But we wanted to check those at the door and just take some real concrete data to understand what products are actually being purchased the most, how much are these properties spending on those products. So we're not just looking at weight, but we're also looking at volume. And then we also wanted to kind of rank these products based on, again, how much they were spending, but also how easy would it be to replace with a reusable product instead? Is this product currently recyclable or compostable? Is it made of plastic? How easy would it be to reduce the usage of the product? So we ranked some purchasing reports that we pulled from 6 different properties under this brand, ranked them based on these criteria, and then came up with the top products to focus on. So these were these 10 products that you see on the screen here. And we have, just to kind of add on to that, we have seen these products come up again and again with other clients and at other properties. So a lot of our assumptions that we checked at the door did end up being true, as it turned out.
No surprise. I'm looking at the list, number 4. Why don't we talk a little bit about in-room water bottles, because they just come up all the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, we see all of our clients, particularly in the hospitality space, struggling with what to do with water bottles in guest rooms. And we have clients who we've met on all ends of the spectrum, from single-use plastic water bottles stocked in the room to all the way to filtered water in the room with refillable carafes. So as we mentioned before, our job and our client's mission is to really just move these products up the spectrum to more sustainable. So that often means moving away from those single-use plastic bottles, potentially to single-use cartons or aluminum water bottles. With aluminum water bottles, sometimes they can be refilled again and again, so they can be reusable for a while. Then kind of moving up the ladder, we then go to water bottles that can be refilled by staff and brought back into the room. And then kind of the gold standard is having filtered water either in the rooms, or a more affordable alternative is having them on each floor in the hallways. And then having refillable glass or other reusable material carafes and cups in the rooms. So you might not be able to start, all the way at the gold standard. You might have to move your way up. But this is definitely a product that we take into consideration every time.
That is great. I mean, we had a client recently be looking into putting filtered water into every guest room, bathroom. And let's just say it was a very, very expensive endeavor, but being able to compromise with having beautiful carafes or nice water bottles in the room and having an on-floor filtered station was a great improvement, and not nearly as expensive.
Exactly. And one other thing that I want to add on to that, as we said, you might not have the resources or the bandwidth to move all the way to the gold standard right away. Not everyone necessarily has the resources or the bandwidth either to do a very extensive, sustainable purchasing project where they pull a bunch of purchasing reports across different properties in the brand. We totally understand that. So again, going back to the methodology, where can we find low-hanging fruit? You might just want to hone in on, going back to the criteria, a couple of these criteria, or just start with how much are we spending, what items are we spending the most on, or to take kind of any anecdotal data that you have to find where to focus. So this is definitely a project where you can find your way in, regardless of the amount of bandwidth you have.
It's fantastic. So how does zero waste purchasing become embedded in every department's purchasing process?
Yeah, so obviously you can't really have a strong sustainable purchasing arm if you don't, to start with, have a sustainable purchasing policy. So we always want to start with having a strong, robust policy. We have template policies that we share with our clients that help to get them started. But policies should really have some concrete goals or some concrete standards built into them. And those are going to be very personal to a company. So instead of just having kind of the general preamble of, we aim to find more sustainable alternatives for all of our products, putting in some concrete goals and timelines to meet those goals is really important. So maybe that means that all of your janitorial supplies, paper janitorial supplies, are at least 50% post-consumer recycled paper. So that's just one example, but making sure that you're actually putting those in instead of just having kind of the vague language actually makes it a lot easier for your purchasing team to choose the right items and make the right decisions. So it gives them kind of structure and direction. So that's the first piece, is having a robust purchasing policy. But also what's really important to kind of weave it into your culture is to not let it kind of start and end with your purchasing team. So obviously they're making a lot of decisions around what materials are being brought in to into your four walls, but products are obviously used by every department at a company, some much more than others. And so it's also going to be really important to weave this sustainable practice into the other departments as well, basically into standard operating procedures throughout the business.
We love that.
So we will often see that quite a bit with serviceware. So, coffee cups, utensils, napkins, straws. We can make sure that the most sustainable option is being purchased by the purchasing team, but where we're really going to find waste reduction is by training and holding, counter staff and F&B staff to a standard where, they're only giving away straws by request only, or they have the straws behind the counter for when people ask for them. They're not over serving napkins or to-go cups if people are dining in. So it starts with purchasing, but it really flows all the way through to how you actually run your business and train your team.
Like so many things that we work on in zero waste. That's great. That is great. One question we get asked all the time is, can I do this with my current procurement partners? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that is absolutely kind of a central question. Most of our clients have worked long and hard to build relationships with their suppliers, and they don't necessarily want to upend those relationships or have to find new partners and suppliers to get these more sustainable materials and products. The good news is that in most every case, you can start with your current suppliers. So that's, again, very important to a lot of our clients. And where they often will start is by reaching out to their suppliers, potentially once they've already developed their sustainable purchasing policy, and saying, these are our goals, these are our standards around material makeup, or these are some specific products or brands that we have identified that we're interested in, and work with their suppliers to provide those. In a lot of cases, they already have a sustainable alternative. Okay. And in other cases, they may be able to source one for you. So definitely you can start through that. And then if there is some product that is a little bit earlier on the market, reaching out to your supplier and seeing if you can work with them is definitely the best way forward.
That is great news, because that is what everybody wants to hear as we try to eliminate the number of different partners that we have to work with. So do you have some examples of cost savings for companies that have made these kinds of product switches to more sustainable options?
Yeah, absolutely. So, something that we kind of brushed on, but haven't really, come right out and said explicitly, is where you're really going to find cost reduction is through waste reduction. So switching over to a compostable single-use item from a plastic single-use item at this point in 2025 is often not going to find you cost savings. Unfortunately, these more specialty materials like bamboo right now are more expensive than plastic is, the plastic alternative. We hope that changes in the coming years. We definitely will see that change if there's, a groundswell of enough companies moving to those more sustainable materials. But in the meantime, you're really going to find your cost savings through reduction in waste. So that is going to be using fewer single-use items, having a stronger reliance on reusables, and like I said before, changing service procedures so that you're not unnecessarily using certain products. So one of those examples is a luxury hotel that we worked with that was able to kind of comb through their operations and eliminate use of single-use nitrile gloves in their F&B operations where it wasn't necessary. Instead, they placed a much greater reliance on proper hand washing procedures and proper and frequent that align with the health code in their region. And they were actually able to reduce their monthly glove usage by over 47%. So a lot of times we find that there are procedures that maybe are already formalized in your standard operating procedure, but haven't really been, trained through all of your team members. So this might be a case of that as well, where we know the hand washing procedure, but just in case we're putting on nitrile gloves and no one's really checking that. So this was a great example of we could actually take that usage down by almost half just by making a couple of tweaks here and there. So in this example, it led to an annual waste reduction of 741 pounds. That's 96,000 gloves per year, and an annual cost savings of almost $8,000. So that might not be, a huge amount of money for hotels who are spending a lot more than that on a daily basis. But that said, each of these, small procedure changes, just tightening things up or diving back to the standard operating procedure or making sure that your team knows that there is a goal around this, that's going to save you money, in each of these categories, and it really starts to add up.
And these other benefits of 96,000 gloves that are not going to be breaking down in the environment. And there's such a terrible contaminant for our food waste stream that we need to keep clean in all these places. So avoiding that. So it's a huge number.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Another example that I love to bring up, which is an example of moving from a disposable to a reusable, is a restaurant group that we've worked with. They were using single-use compostable spoons for their tasting spoons in the back of house. And we were able to switch them back to reusable metal spoons. This also had kind of an outsized impact. They did this across 3 different locations and are planning to do it at more. And the cost savings that they found was about $4,500 per location. So again, making this small switch means that you're putting a lot less strain on your waste streams and you are actually saving thousands of dollars every year.
That's great. That is fantastic. All right. So another question we get is in the world that we're specifically talking to today, because obviously with carbon savings, we know that food waste is the place everybody needs to go. But when you're looking at eliminating single-use plastics, what do we see on the carbon savings front? Because for our folks tracking ESG and really thinking about these numbers.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it comes to purchasing and single-use plastics, is definitely going to always have, or not always, but virtually always have the largest carbon savings, especially if you can move to reusable, but even if you can move to a compostable or infinitely recyclable alternative. The reason for that is that plastics aren't just difficult to recycle downstream and toxic downstream when they hit the landfill, but they are also incredibly carbon intensive and water intensive to manufacture. So there's a lot going into plastics just to make them, and then when they get spit out the other end, they can often, if they are recyclable, only be recycled just once. So that's why in certain cases, even if a client property doesn't have the infrastructure in their region to be able to compost certain single-use items, we would still recommend that they use compostable items over single-use plastics, because we know that the strain on the earth, both in manufacturing, the resources used, and downstream, is going to be lighter. But of course, we are always pushing reusables first. Reusables means you can use it over and over and over again, and you don't have to worry about the upstream impacts after you've already put, several uses into them.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much. So in the quick summary of everything you said, teams should start where they are. If you can't take on a full bore review of 100 different products at your location, focus on a handful of things, focus on a small set of priority criteria, and just get started. Just get started. Every win will give you momentum to do more, and institutionalize the practices. And that's through policies, through sustainable procurement policies, and also putting SOPs in place. Engage all of your staff, because the reduction, which really drives all of the great impacts, require everybody on each team to participate. If we have reusable tasting spoon program, everybody's got to use them and not keep pulling from the disposable list that you might have on hand because you have to-go dishware for your guests or things. So you need to be all over the team to stay on top of this stuff. So that is where to start, and you can go very deep if you want to, as Krietta has demonstrated, which is super exciting. In closing, I mean, we are so thrilled to deliver this information today. Krietta mentioned a couple resources that we have. So Krietta, do you want to forward the slides? I think we've listed some resources here. There you go. So we do have a training module in our zero waste program. People want to dive into a purchasing project with us. We also have templates for sale, where we have the sustainable purchasing review template to really help you look at the products that you have and make some decisions. We have a template sustainable procurement policy. And then we also have some resources, top 15 zero waste purchasing recommendations for hotels, which we have learned along the way. We have a sustainable food serviceware purchasing guide and a go paperless guide for your office spaces and even thinking about menus and other things. So those things are available. If there's any interest, please reach out, and we are here. So definitely you can find us at www.foodprintgroup.com. You can contact us at info@foodprintgroup.com. We hope to hear from you, and thank you for joining us today.